Welcome to Will and Mark's Healthy Sports Obsession. I'm Will Hubner here with Mark Mashashik. We are two doctors of physical therapy, and we are here to answer your PT questions as well as give our take on current sporting events from a health perspective. As always, send your questions to willandmarkshso@gmail.com, and we will answer them on the show. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Will Hubner here with Mark Mashashik. Today we have a special edition. We're going to be hanging out with Jerome Burney. Jerome was a Division I college basketball player at the University of Maryland from 2006 to 2009. Welcome to the show, Jerome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Will and Mark.
Yeah, so first thing first, let's talk about, we got stats here of you in high school, Westlake High School out in Georgia. You're putting up some monster numbers. You averaged a triple-double your senior year.
Yeah, that was, well, I guess to kind of go back on it, the year before that, my junior year, I had 6 blocks, so I was figuring, I can probably up that to 10. It wasn't so much, it was just how easy it became to me, but I guess the main focus for me was, how to trick people into giving me more blocks,
How many did you end up with your senior year?
I had a total, well, 3, I guess we played, 10 games, so it was 330.
Wow.
330, yeah.
You ended with the school's all-time leader in block shots, 570 blocks in your high school career. Is that still the leader, do you know?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's touching that.
That's a lot of blocks.
That is a lot of blocks.
I don't think it was definitely a confidence of mine, and it was actually funny because one of the coaches, assistant coaches, I remember him giving us a paper and writing out goals for the team, so we had 3 individual goals, 3 team goals, and with the exception of the state championship and being fully undefeated, I pretty much reached everything. One of mine was to get a triple-double, get a average triple-double, get a quadruple-double in a game, and I forget what was the other one. I forget what was the other goal, but I ended up getting it.
How much?
Team goals was,
go ahead. Sorry.
And then the team goals was go undefeated, win state championship, and win on the average of 20 points a game or something. So
setting goals and accomplishing them. That's what we like to see from everybody.
That's huge. How much during the games were you kind of counting? Like, all right, I got 8 blocks. I need 2 more. It's in the fourth quarter. Let me figure something out.
Not so much in the big games. The smaller ones, I definitely was.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to think about as much. You just, I want to let the game come to me, but I can definitely had time to think and all right, okay, I got this many. One game I had 12 and a half, and I was definitely counting those because it was oh, that's a lot. Cause I would get 3 in a row, and then on 2 different possessions, and then all right, okay, I'm at 12 and a half. But I was so tired, I'm surprised I even had 18 by the end of the game. So
yeah, talk to us a little bit about. Obviously, you're highly recruited coming out of high school. When did you start to notice, scouts coming to watch games? When did you start getting contacted by schools? When did you know that, Division I at a top-level school was a reality?
And what schools were you getting recruited by?
So initially, I didn't get any scouts until, well, at least I would say D1. Well, no, actually my first scout was a D1. So it was West Kentucky, I think was the first school that sent me a letter.
Hilltoppers.
Yeah. And when I offered, it was just like a letter.
Yeah.
So it was my sophomore year, going to that summer. It was near the end of the school year, but not so much at the very end of it. It's probably around May-ish, April, May. AAU season started to kick off, and that was probably one of my first letters. And then right around that time, a coach from UCLA came to one of our pickup games at Westlake. There was a player at Banneker High School, one of our rivals at the time, and he was a senior. he was, I guess, trying to get looks. And so it was like 3-on-3. So it was like 3 of my teammates and two of my teammates playing with him, and I was guarding him. I shut him down. I had like shot a 3, called alley-oop. So I was like crossing him up, and I was like locking him down. So, you know, the coach was interested, like, oh, who is this? Like, oh, he's a sophomore. So then, like, the guy shook my hand, talked to me for a little bit, and then, like, a week after that, and so I ended up getting a letter from UCLA. So that was, like, my first big college letter. And that was, like, the second school that ever, like, you know, gave me anything. So from that point, I was like, okay, I'm obviously doing something right, you know. And then, so that season was big for me because, and as crazy was, I didn't even play, but one game I had, like, played 2 minutes, and then I did this crazy, I guess, made this one crazy play that got me an invite to Nike Jamboree, which is like a Nike Junior All-American camp. And then the following year, I got invited to Nike All-American, which is a big deal. So, you know, like a lot of small things that's happened, I guess, kind of just, you know, I guess luck is what, preparation, opportunity. So that's basically what happened with me.
As you moved into, you know, junior or senior year, how'd you narrow down your choices? Who were your top choices, and what made you eventually choose the University of Maryland?
Well, I always wanted to go to the ACC. That was a big dream of mine. You know, I was a huge Jordan fan growing up, so being able to, you know, play against the UNC or Duke, you know, those type of schools, that was always a dream of mine. And funny that so Maryland won the national championship at my hometown, and a guy that went to my high school was played for Indiana, so I was actually cheering for Indiana back in 2002. And it's funny because now I'm cool with, like, I've met Steve Blake, got cool with Juan Dixon, Lonnie Baxter, those guys, and
awesome.
They even actually Mouton was one of the first ones I met. But and Tyus Holden. But yeah, so like out of that group, I got to know most of those guys, at least on the starting 5. But you know, I was actually cheering for Indiana at the time because they had 2 Atlanta natives. One of them went to my high school. So fast forward, you know, when going through decisions and stuff, and because the main thing was I was looking for schools that I could potentially, like, I knew I wasn't going to probably play my freshman year, but like going to my sophomore year, I'm like, all right, you know, I want to, you know, come off the bench, you know, at least get a decent amount of minutes. So Maryland had a perfect opportunity because, you know, my freshman year they had 6 seniors, you know, and then they only had 3 big men. So I figured I can be that 4th guy, you know, that 4th or 3rd guy for the bigs coming off the bench, you know, and then, you know, getting some quality minutes. So whereas like other schools, like I was looking at like Georgetown, they had like 7, 9 guys that was like around my height. You know, so that's something I had to look forward towards. Like, as far as, like, all right, how many guys I got to compete against to get on the floor? Georgia Tech didn't give me a full scholarship. They had offered me a partial. And then, like I said, as far as, like, I wanted to play in the ACC, so that was, like, always a big dream of mine. And then on top of that, Maryland being close to a city like D.C. and Baltimore, so it didn't feel secluded, like I guess like an Indiana would, or like a Clemson or something. So, you know, so all those factors came to mind, and then when I visited the school, you know, they had some good programs, you know, variety of programs as far as different schools or whatnot for degrees. And so all those things came into factors: playing time, play style, and yeah, so it felt like a good fit. And then also a guy I played AAU with, Landon Milbourne, he recruited me too. So
exactly, I was going to ask you.
Go there.
You're part of Maryland. That was one of Maryland's best recruiting classes that year. They had Landon Milbourne, Grievous Vasquez, Eric Hayes, and you, Jerome Burney. I think we were ranked 8th nationally that year in basketball recruiting. How much, you just mentioned Landon Milbourne, did you hear from Grievous or Eric Hayes, or did any of the other recruits kind of contact you and try to get you on board?
No, it was mainly just Landon and the assistant coach at the time, Moxley. I was talking to, because I actually met. I actually played against Gravis and Eric before I I even thought about Maryland. So it was a summer. I didn't commit until October of my senior year in high school. So we played them the summer is Boo Williams in Orlando. We played against them, and I remember, I never forget this, when we walking out the gym of Orlando, Worldwide Sports at Disney, I was just so happy walking by Landon, because at the time I was still committed to Miami, and I was walking by Landon, and then he introduced me to Eric, and I met Gravis. Well, I didn't really meet him, but I knew who Gravis was, because you never see like a 6'6" Hispanic guy playing point guard, you know. So I remember seeing him at NBA camp and stuff. So, you know, so like I've definitely seen them, been around them before, but I didn't really get to know them until I guess the summer, like our orientation, I guess. No, actually, no. Before that, we played in the Charm City Classic. So that's when I got to know them.
All right, so let's move on to your time at Maryland. So I know, you know, a lot of controversy with coaches kind of being under scrutiny lately, and there's kind of like this toxic culture, they're calling it, to where you see players yelling at coaches, and I think, you know, the Rutgers coach throwing a ball at one of the players. Talk to us a little bit about just like the yelling, kind of a little bit of verbal abuse. How much do you feel is you know, the relationship you have with your coach and determining kind of taking it personally, or if it's more of a abuse, or, you know, is this par for the course? What sort of things do you kind of just get used to as a collegiate athlete? Is kind of getting yelled at the norm, or you think there's something more to that?
Well, I think a lot of that, I guess before we started the full conversation, a lot of it starts from how you grew up. You know, a lot of the coaches that I grew up under were, you know, yellers. You know, so eventually either you're going to, I feel, you know, hide your emotions and then try to, you know, all right, let's work through this, or you're going to complain. You know what I mean? So the problem I think a lot of players are, either they don't grow up, either they get coddled to the point where, you know, a coach feels afraid that they're going to lose their best players because they're yelling at them, or the parents try to shield them to where, like, they wouldn't get yelled at, you know? So when they do get into an environment, let's say where the coach is not physical and not being too, I mean, as obviously, like I said, even with verbal abuse, there's a line between, like, you know, all right, he's just trying to encourage you and he's trying to, like, you know, tell you to man up, as opposed to, like, you know, calling you out by your name. You know, there's a difference. But, you know, if they don't cross that line, then at that point, you know, you just, like, you as a player have to, you know, you have to dig in within yourself, like, all right, is there something wrong with me or something wrong with the coach? And if there's something wrong with you, then you need to figure out, like, all right, how can I deal with this? And at some point, you just got to get immune to it. You know, you got to take the message without the verbiage behind it, you know, or at least the intensity. And then on the flip side, you know, yes, you do have some coaches who go in the stream, like the Rutgers coach, you know, who, you know, get real physical, or even, I guess, Bobby Knight's been known to, like, you know, get in players and,
choke
like, you know, point at them and stuff. So, yeah. So you definitely have different variables, but, I mean, let's say 95 or even 99% of coaches, I'm pretty sure they're not going, they might be right on the line, but I don't think they're really crossing it too much, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like similar to like when you were working with a client or when me and Will are working with a patient, you have to know the right amount to push every individual.
Right. And some people they say, like, some people came from environments where they've been yelled at, or that's what drives them. Other people just need to be quiet. So, you know, because they feel like they're under too much pressure, or they cave in and things like that. So, yes, you obviously have to know your players, and obviously I think basketball is probably slightly easier because, you know, we're not in pads, you know, we're not in helmets, we don't have any protective gear on, so, you know, and you only got 15 guys you got to coach, or maybe unless you got like extra walk-ons or something. But on the flip side, say with football, even lacrosse, you have 40 to over 100 guys on the field, so in situations like that, you trying to coach all of them in one way probably is not going to work, and then on top of that, you're not going to get to know 123 kids on a football team, or even say 40-something on a lacrosse team, as well as you will, say, 15, guys in 1 year. So I think, obviously coaches got to realize, all right, you can't take psychology and then psychoanalyze everybody, but at the same time, you kind of have to figure something out because you can't coach everybody the same way.
Right, that makes sense.
Could you tell, even just as a teammate, just see how some players might respond to, yelling and criticism, whereas others, it actually makes them play worse, and that kind of, the coach needs to kind of figure out, like you're saying, which players can handle it and which players might need to go a different direction in order to get the best out of them? Could you tell that as a teammate?
Sometimes, because usually what happens is if a guy's playing well and then a coach is yelling at him, it's usually because they're offensively playing well and they're yelling at him. Then all right, okay, coach, I got you. You know what I mean? Because then it's almost like, all right, I just got to make up on this end. But usually when you get frustrated, what happens is when people get frustrated, and this for any level, when they get frustrated, then they get the extra anxiety on them. Then they just feel like every mistake they make just multiplies. So every cut is going to dig deeper, and then it gets to a point where you're just broken, and then you just feel like you're just in a sunken place where you can't get out of. So I think, like somebody like Gravis, I think he thrived under Grave. He lives for that intensity. I can remember even when Eric, every small mistake he made, at least his earlier, he didn't get it. He didn't, I guess, initially step up to the challenge as much. But once he became more assertive, then you start to see Eric being able to take it from Coach Williams. By this time he's been in his second or third year, I guess, under Williams at this point. So, obviously Eric matured more into it. Whereas Gravis, I think he thrives under that type of, environment. So, and in a sense, it was almost like a perfect point guard for Coach Williams.
Right. Growing up for me, I remember my coach, football background, my coach would tell me, if we're not yelling at you, then that's when you have to worry. I think if you're getting yelled at and you're still in the game, that's usually a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. I remember when I wasn't playing, and then Coach Williams, say if I made a mistake or something, then I was looking at Coach Williams to be yelled at, but usually it came from the consistent coaches. So I was like, oh. But then, I think when he figured, all right, I got to groom this guy, so then he would start getting on me more. Then I was like, okay, all right, Coach is starting to see me. So, yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Yeah. So, Jerome, we know you put in a lot of sacrifice into your college career and the value of being that high-level athlete. We want to get your opinion. What do you think? Should colleges be paying scholarship athletes?
Yes. To what degree, I don't know. That's a $1 million question. I can look at a guy that I've grown to know, Cam, who I went to high school with. He probably made Auburn. You don't even know how many
money
they made off him. So for say a guy like him, he could, if they said, all right, we're going to pay this guy $1 million, now, how can you be mad, Whereas, if you look at, even say somebody like me, if I got that, it's all right, what you doing? You know what I mean? So, obviously there has to be a cap. I think for one, to alleviate that, they should allow, so this one thing that you may not know. So football and basketball players can't, at least men's basketball and football players, we can't work jobs. We're not supposed to work jobs. We can do work camps, but we can't have a salary paid job or stuff. So
I didn't know that.
Because we're for-profit sport. Because we make money for the school. Because I think because a lot of the older players, like a Herschel Walker, he'll work at a car dealership, and then the car dealership will send all the clients to him, and then he basically makes all the money. You know what I'm saying? So I think they kind of want to take away from that. But if you're other sports, you're fine. So, and I think that's partially because, they're not on TV all the time and they're not making the school money. So
double negative for you guys.
Most of them, huh?
That's a double negative for you guys. You're saying you have to do more work and you can't get paid.
Right, exactly. So I think if they at least allowed us to make money off our name, allowed us, at least, gave us, and then on top of that, gave us like business training, help start our business to make money off our name. And I can even say like, or trade that for a chance to say pay for a grad school, because all of us won't make, the NBA, NFL.
That's a great idea. You should get 6-year scholarships for 4 years.
Will alleviate, so then that, it won't guarantee us a job, but it'll definitely put us in the conversation, for a higher paying salary job. And then it's like, all right, so now we can work with this. So then you don't necessarily have to pay the players, but at the same time, we get to make money off our name. We get to, get business training to, for branding purposes, And then on top of that, I think the whole purpose of branding, I kind of figured what it was when I was younger, but I didn't really realize how big it was. But, when you have a social media platform, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever that may be, you pretty much branded yourself. So any correct or incorrect actions you may do on social media, it will always reflect on you. So, I can remember times when, I would, about to post something like, well, let me take that back. I don't want to disrupt my family, or I don't want to disrupt anybody else who may be offended by this. You know what I'm saying? So, it's always like a line that you don't want to cross, because you realize, and that's just for people that I actually know. So I can only imagine how much more it is for somebody who has millions of fans, all across the globe, or even say a potential college athlete who might get drafted, his draft stock flocks just because of, any affiliations that may be negative to their brand, so that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, Jerome, I've heard, a negative stereotype that goes towards athletes, especially when you're watching these big-time players on ESPN and ABC and all these primetime channels, is, you look at the major and you constantly see, like, psychology or journalism. You see what most people tend to think of as, like, these lesser degrees, like easier degrees. Can you talk to us about how much time in your day or in your week goes into lifting, playing sports, and then how much time you're expected to be in the classroom? Do you feel like you can get a full use out of a athletic scholarship? Like, are you getting the benefits of the way that they're paying you through a scholarship?
We look at it, I guess it boils down to two things. I guess I remember this post, a while ago. It had, you can have 3 things. You can only have 2 of these things in undergrad. It was school, I think social life, and sleep. So you can have you can have 2 of the 3. And then when you get to undergrad, then you can pretty much only have 1. But, when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, I can understand that. But then, like you said, when you got to compile that on with what's considered, I guess, pretty much like a full-time job, especially like for preseason for us, it's it's not the worst, but at the same time, it's all right, at least three times a week we have morning runs, or morning workouts, and then, so right before that, we'll take a shower, go to class, and then if we have day tutors, then we'll go there. If not, then we still got class. Hopefully we got a chance to eat, and then, you may have a tutor, may not, and then, we're going to pay pickup for 2 hours, and then shower, tutors afterwards, eat, and then hopefully, then at an hour, 2 hour span, you may get, some social time if you're not still doing schoolwork, And mind you, this is in September, so then by the time you get to, say, basketball season, then you don't necessarily have the morning workouts exactly, but if you want to work on your craft, you need to get up in the morning, 7 o'clock, whatever that may be, get up, you know what I'm saying, work with a coach for an hour or so, at least 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and then you got a 3-hour practice because you're going to have freshmen, so you got to get them implemented in our system. You know, I remember my freshman year, because we were so senior loaded, it was almost like if you don't get these plays, you're not going to play, you know what I'm saying? So outside of Eric and Gravis, me and Landon was like, let's hop this drive for that point, you know? So, and like I was hurt for a good portion of it. Right. So I missed on a lot of learning the plays and stuff my freshman year. I mean, I might have watched, but, you know, you definitely learn, you know, you get the basis of it watching, but you don't really learn it unless you're, like, involved in the play. And then, like, I remember my sophomore year was the worst because we had anatomy physiology. Well, I had anatomy physiology. And I can remember in the the spring, because we do most of our trips then, AAU season. So we'd be gone for 2 days. I miss half the notes, you know, and and then we'll have a test, and then you know I get some of the questions right, others not, just because I just wasn't there in class, and we writing notes like 4-page notes every 3 days, you know, every 2 days. So it was definitely it was a struggle when you especially have the harder classes.
It's like doing 2 full-time jobs.
Right. And then, you know, obviously you're going to have some classes worse than others, so
sure.
Hopefully you can focus on the ones that's harder, so you won't have to, you know, worry about too much for the lesser classes. But, you know, for some majors, you're going to have more than one hard class at the same time, just because, you know, scheduling as far as times, like, oh, this is the only time it can work for you. So, or you need this specific class to, you know, advance along your degree. So it's definitely
Jerome, I want to redirect you for a second, just so we get some of the good basketball stuff in here. You being more of a defensive-minded player at Maryland, who was the greatest offensive player you faced, and how'd you do against him?
Ever or at Maryland?
Let's both. Let's get both.
All right, I'll answer 3 people, I guess. All right, so the best player I seen that I didn't play against was Al Thornton for Florida State. The best player I played against 2 great guys, but the two being Mike Beasley and KD, but the one that was hardest for me to guard at the time was Mike Beasley, because I try to find somebody what I can use against them. And so since I was stronger than Kevin Durant, I was like, all right, okay, at least I have that on him.
You could push
Mike
around.
Beasley, he was bigger, faster, and stronger than me. So, you know, so it was like, all right, what can I do with this guy? You know, so, yeah, he was a monster. And, you know, like if anybody's seen him at Kansas State, I mean, he broke all of KD's records. So, you know, that lets you know how much of a monster he was in college, at least. And the last time I had a chance to even, last time I was on the court against him, him and KD was on the floor, and I wanted to play guard against KD. I didn't want to touch Mike. Yeah, so, and then the best player at Maryland, man, I'll probably say DJ Strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say DJ. Yeah, because he can do it all. And anybody who was there, because a lot of times, if we had a big lineup, they'll put me at 3 defensively. So I had to guard him. And it was a few times. And then later on in the year, I would help a lot of guys warm up. And one of the things I did was guard DJ for like 2 to 5 minutes prior to the games. And so it was be sometimes he'll get me and we'll be even. But one time against Virginia, I literally blocked everything, stole the ball from him. We was probably going at about 5-10 minutes. He was so tired he couldn't even play for the second half. And then after the game, said, yeah, let's limit this to like 2 minutes. So, but yeah, he was definitely a monster. You know, he had it all. He was strong. He can play 1 to 3. He can rebound. You know, he's pretty smart. Took his shots. Yeah, he was definitely, I would say, the best offensive player at Maryland that I played against.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, Jerome, I mean, anybody that follows your social media, you're constantly posting videos. You're in great shape. You've kept up with even after collegiate athletes. You're in great shape. I know you went out and got your CSCS, strength and conditioning, and now you're working as a performance coach, personal trainer at Titus Sports Academy in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about? I mean, we constantly are seeing through social media, through just a ton of different advertisement. There's a lot of different training programs out there. Can you talk about what goes into, or what people should be thinking about when picking a training program, and kind of your take on what sets maybe Titus Sports Academy over the top compared to some other competitors?
I got you. Yeah. I think main thing is adherence. So with anything, like whether it be a sport, anything, any activity you want to do, if you can enjoy it and just like keep it for a long time, then that's probably the best thing for you to do. All right, because now obviously, like if say somebody want to look like a bodybuilder, but they all you want to do is dance, then yeah, that's not going to work. But at the same time, for the most part, if you're looking to get in shape, if you look at certain workouts, and then if you want to at least get in decent shape, then yeah, I would say go adhere to the program that best fits what you think you can accomplish on a day-in-day basis. Now, if you want to look like a specific person, unless you have their body type or high physical attributes, I would just say just try to do their program and try your best to look like them. But outside of that, I would say just adhere to something that you can stick with day in, day out. Now, to answer your other question about what set Titus apart, I think the main thing is for us is we obviously preach mechanics and fundamentals. So pretty much I like to start people from the ground up as far as, getting people's mechanics right, learning how to do a perfect lunge, a squat, bench press, push up, working towards to say even do a pull up, But I think a lot of times people don't know how to really engage specific muscle groups. So that's the first thing, and that's mainly for adults or kids. Now the difference is our kids, to say teenage or older kids, they're more trained to be athletes. Whereas adults, we just tend to focus on them getting in shape, So, and then on top of that, I like to personally, get the most out of my clients, my athletes. So, for the athletic workout, yes, it's a general athletic workout, help you build and things like that. But I know if you are a level 3 or 4, I do need to push you more. I do need to put more weight on you. But at the same time, if your form's a little janky, then you might have to, go back. You may have to, go back to the basics. So the snatch is one of the universal Olympic lifts that's considered, one of the great, overall conditioning, coordination.
Absolutely.
Lifts. However, if you aren't able to do an overhead squat, then it's like, all right, let's just work on your overhead squat before you get the bar over your head.
Train the parts and make them a whole. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Jerome.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so a lot of those basics, I think, a lot of times some trainers forget. I'm not trying to judge anybody's program, but I do know there are some trainers that do kind of forget that. And I know even myself in the past, I probably even have, so that's obviously being in the business long enough to know, like, all right, these are mistakes I made in the past and try not to make those same mistakes, going forward.
Yeah, Jerome, I mean, as physical therapists, we see clients that come in a lot of times after going to these training programs, like people trying to get in shape, or maybe athletes that were, like you're saying, they got janky form, they're not doing things correctly. So from our end, like as physical therapists, and when we're trying to refer out, it's so important for us to have people that we can trust, that we know, they have their CSCS, they know what they're doing, they know mechanics of the shoulder, they know mechanics of the knee, they know where the patella should track, all of those things, like you said, often get overlooked. And I think for people out there looking for trainers, I mean, definitely look for people like Jerome, look for people that have a good foundation and know what they're doing. Otherwise, I think there's serious risk of injury, and you're going to end up maybe needing physical therapy, which is going to, set you back. If you hurt yourself running and you're trying to lose weight, well then, if you're injured, you're not going to be able to run. It's going to be kind of counterintuitive. So, I think it's super important for us to refer out to people.
And then to even add to that, I would say the first thing anybody should ask is, all right, what are your expectations to me? And if the first thing they want to say is to get you to look better, then you got the wrong person. Because even though that should be one of your end goals, that shouldn't be their first thing. The first thing is to make sure your body's moving right. And then from there, all right, performance and that aesthetics part of it comes second and third. Because first thing they need to have you moving right. All right, so whether it be, if you got bad hips, at least have it where it won't make it worse, at least. And then from the standpoint of, say, if you're younger, yes, increase your verticals, run faster, things like that. And then obviously I would say last should be aesthetics. All right, I think, like functionality should come first, performance, and then, if you got a six-pack or if you want your pecs or shoulder or delts, whatever, looking a certain way.
I like to say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Learn how to do it slow and correctly, and then we can work on fast. Yeah. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
And you mentioned, the first thing you said that's the most important at any training program is adherence. So if your main goal is to look good, people need to realize that losing weight, getting six-pack out, that doesn't happen overnight. That takes months and months of training, and it's, so if you're going after it, I want to look good, you go into it 2 weeks and you're not losing any weight yet, you're not seeing any changes, that's going to crush your adherence. So I think you're right, setting the tone with expectations and kind of getting them more geared toward a healthy lifestyle is going to ultimately what brings them to their goals.
Right. Because obviously, the more goals you set, obviously, you have to be realistic in them. There are subjective goals and there's objective. I think, obviously, everybody will objectively want to look better. But, for me, looking better is different from somebody else. Because I can, a lot of people, I've had clients be mad at me for me saying that I lost too much weight. And the thing was, for me, was I hated being skinny. So, me right now I'm 250, and I would say about 3 weeks ago I was probably down to 240. So I took carbs out my diet just to lose some weight, but I lost too much, so I had to add them back in. And also another thing too was performance-wise, I wasn't, I like to push the sled, so I was push the sled great for one or two sets, and then say if I had to do 10 sets, then that last 7 felt like I was, pulling the train, so I had to realize, all right, okay, I'm going to add fruits back into my diet, but I can't, just get rid of them completely, so.
Yeah. Jerome, one last question for you. So, University of Maryland, this upcoming basketball year, Anthony Cowan came back, Jalen Smith came back, Wiggins is back, Ayala's back. We brought in Marial Chol and the Mitchell brothers. We're preseason ranked number 9 right now. What is your prediction for this next year? Could we be contenders this year, and what are you expecting out of us?
I'm just basing this off of Turgeon's past teams. I think we have tended. With this high-ranking team, I think we'll probably start fast. For our first 10 games, I think we're gonna hit a lull in the middle of the season. So main thing is to correct all the mistakes, either within the first 3 games of the Big Ten Big Ten conference season, and then the last, I guess we'll play 16. So the last 13, that's when we start to pick up. And then main thing is to make sure you ebb and flow in the right time, because a lot of times teams can, they get too high early in the season and then they can't keep that same level of play, So you obviously want to peak at the right time. So I think as long as we do that around February, I think we'll be fine. The problem will come with, we do it too late. And I think, too, by this team, I think outside of the Mitchell twins, I think outside of them and maybe Sticks, everybody else is considered underdogs. So I think as long as we keep that mindset of being hungry, I think we should be fine. I think, like, I remember, I guess back when we was ranked number one, when, I guess 2015, 2016 season, I think we got too big-headed and, you know, it obviously didn't work for us. So I think if we have a similar mentality similar to last season, but I think be a little more consistent, you know, on the road, I think we should be fine.
Well, outside of the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think, you know, I think Sweet 16 is definitely possible for this group. As far as in conference, I guess it'd be a little different because depending on how some of the Big Ten teams play. But I think if we can make a, you know, fourth or even say third rank, I guess at least in the regular season of the Big Ten, we should be able to at least make, you know, a Sweet 16 run in the NCAA.
Just outside of the Mitchell brothers and I guess Mariel Chol coming in, like all these guys last year, they won a game in the NCAA tournament, and then they still have that taste of that kind of last-second shot by Waters that LSU had on them. Do you think they use that as motivation to train over the summer and kind of, you know, they had a little bit of success by winning a close game in their first game, and then they were right there to where they could have made a run at it. Do you think they use that as motivation to train a little bit harder?
I'm sure, especially since this is a squad where most of the guys outside of Fernando, at least for the main guys, are returning, you know. So, I mean, you can ask any of the guys that I played with about Lucius and Michigan State, you know. So I'm pretty sure if they remember that from 10 seasons ago at least, then, you know, I'm pretty sure that they will remember that last layup from LSU, you know. So I think, and the thing is too, you gotta, and this is, I guess this goes along with, you know, any athlete, you know, you train to where you want to be at. So if, you know, if you're a high school student that wants to be a college athlete, you know, you train, you know, you try to figure out what's the college schedule, you try to figure out like how hard they train, how hard they go in drills, you know. So same thing, if you want to be NCAA Sweet 16 or even Final 14, you know, the team, the guys, the individuals, they got to make sure they put themselves through situations, you know, whether it be playing against NBA pros or, you know, or everybody in the group, make sure they all in one accord, you know. So when they do get in a situation like that, you know, so verbally they can, you know, make sure they, you know, talk, communicate, you know, hey, you know, you got to lock that guy down. This is what we're going to potentially do, you know, whether it be scouting film, doing all your assignments on the court, make sure nobody get trouble off the court, you know, things like that. So all those things in preparation will lead them to the moment, and then potentially the LSU layup, you know, won't happen again, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have high hopes for him this year, and we'll be rooting for him. Well, thanks, Jerome, for coming on to our show. We enjoyed having you, and you're welcome on here anytime.
And again, that's Titus Sports Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. Jerome Burney. And Jerome, do you have any social media that our listeners can follow you at?
Yes, I have two. I guess I have two on Instagram. For one for the company, so Titus Sports ATL, and then mine Brawls_Diesel with a Z, and I'm just Jerome Burney on Facebook. So none of the pages are private, so you can just look up and down the profile if you like. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome.
Thanks for having me.
As always, email us at willemmarkshso@gmail.com, and we'll answer your questions on the podcast. Over and out.